Do is commonly used as an auxiliary verb to help us with questions and negatives, but it has advanced uses all of its own. And I'm going to introduce 4 of them to you in this lesson, which is aimed at the C1 level. So it's good if you are trying to reach an IELTS level of 7 or higher. For the first use of do, look at this picture here. What do you think is happening? Well, someone might be asking this. I was wondering if you need some help. Now, it doesn't seem clear if this person needs help, but try looking at the next person. This person is on a rock surrounded by sea. So the answer might be, I don't, but look at him. He does really need help. He does really need help. Notice that we've used the verb do in the middle of a sentence. And it looks like it's in an auxiliary usage. This is a surprise because we normally see it with negatives and questions, but this is completely grammatically correct. Now, why have we done this? Why have we used do in the middle of this sentence? The reason is to emphasize the verb more. Normally, we could just say, he really needs help. But by adding the verb to do, which in this case is does because it follows he, it emphasizes the verb even more. He does really need help. It points you to the information in a more focused way. So it makes the information more important. The form is like this. First of all, we have the subject, which here is he. He is the subject of the sentence. Then do or does, depending on whether it's I, you, he, she, it, we, or they. And then we have optionally an adverb here. So really is an adverb that stresses the situation even more. We don't have to use it. You could say he does need help, but does really just even increases the emphasis more. Here we have someone who is trying desperately to get someone else's attention. So they use as many things in language as they can to do that. By adding the verb to do, by adding an adverb, it just increases the urgency of the message. And then now the verb is in the infinitive form. After do, we don't use needs, it's just need, which is in the infinitive form. So this is a really useful use of the verb do when you want to emphasize the verb more. Let's look at the second advanced use of do. Have you ever seen a teacher like this? A teacher who looks like they've had a hard time dealing with their students. This teacher might say things such as, James, do be quiet. You are supposed to be working. And Jane, don't be a clown. Sit down. Notice here that the teacher again has used do and don't for a certain effect. They could have just said be quiet, but instead she said do be quiet. Why? Here is the reason why. We use do in these sentences, followed by the verb to be in the infinitive form, for behaviour required or expected in the moment, and often as a result of frustration. So not just James be quiet, James do be quiet. This is what I expect you to do. Again, by using do, we're underlining the importance of the instruction. It doesn't have to just go with be, but it often is. The form in this case is do be, followed by an adjective or a noun, or don't be, followed by an adjective or a noun. It is possible to use other verbs apart from be, but it needs to fit this criteria, which is behaviour required or expected. And the verb to be fits that well, because you're telling someone how you expect them to be. So do, followed by be, followed by an adjective or a noun, indicates required behaviour, or behaviour that you don't want if you're using the negative form. For the third use of do that we're covering in this lesson, have a look at the lady who is telling a story about dinosaurs. And imagine that she's telling it really well. You might say to her at the end, no one tells a story the way that you tell a story. Notice there are two different clauses here. We have the main clause in blue, and then we have an extra clause as part of the that clause, that you tell a story. But notice as well that tell a story is repeated twice. And we can leave out the second tell a story by doing this. No one tells a story the way that you do. Here, do replaces tell a story. And we can use do or does for this use, to repeat a previous action when meaning in the same way. So here, tell a story was the same as tell a story in the first part. The second part was the same as the first part. So here, do is used as a replacement word, showing that I am repeating the first, tell a story. Here's the form. So we have clause 1, which was no one tells a story. And then clause 2 comes in the that part of the sentence, that you tell a story, but with do replacing the activity in clause 1 if it is the same. So tell a story becomes do. A couple of notes about this particular use of do. Firstly, do can just replace the verb, but if there's a verb and the object, it can replace all of that too. In this case, we have verb and object. You tell a story. Verb is tell, a story is the object. Note as well that we do not use this with other auxiliaries or modals. It needs to be a straight replacement for an ordinary verb or an ordinary object, which is the same in the previous clause. For our final advanced use of do, have a look at this sign. We often see it on the roads. What will happen if you don't follow the sign when you're driving? Maybe, in some countries, in my country, maybe this. You shouldn't drive the wrong way down a street. Those that drive the wrong way down a street will be fined by the police. Now, that seems a rather long sentence. We repeat a very long phrase twice. There's a lot of words involved, and it's not good for the progression of the sentence. So we need to find some words that make this shorter without losing the meaning. And this is what you can do. You shouldn't drive the wrong way down a street. Those that do so will be fined by the police. Notice this phrase here, do so. There's a similarity with what we looked at in part 3 of this lesson, but a slight difference here. We can use do so for the following reason. when introducing a consequence of doing something in the same way described in the previous clause. And that's the important thing here. We're introducing the consequence. We're not simply repeating something. We are introducing what's coming next. You shouldn't drive the wrong way down a street. Those that do so, or if you do so, you will be fined by the police. Those that do so will be fined by the police. So do so here repeats the previous information, which was quite long, so you're shortening the sentence, and it leads into the consequence. So the form is fairly simple, and similar to the previous point about do, replacing the verb plus the object. But a slight difference here. Clause 1 remains the same. You shouldn't drive the wrong way down a street. But clause 2 uses do so to replace the activity in clause 1 if it is the same. So where you see do so, it means think back to the action that was introduced in the previous sentence and expect a consequence to come immediately after.